The Chiefs had trouble at the left tackle position last season, that's for sure. But could three of the Chiefs' five starting offensive line positions, and really, if we want to delve down real deep, could four of the Chiefs' offensive line positions be up for grabs this season? Well, if you have spent any amount of time around here, you know how I feel about that. But we do have an article to go through today, and it's a long one, and I want to get through it. So let's get straight to it. Another Chiefs O-line overhaul. Kansas City vows to be better after Super Bowl trampling, from The Athletic, from Michael Silver. Now, just going to warn you up front, this article starts pretty rough for your friends here in Kansas City. So here is how it begins. When we last saw the Kansas City Chiefs, well, they were tough to watch. Things got so ghastly on Super Bowl Sunday that legions of viewers simply tuned out. Source? Everyone hates the Chiefs so bad, I imagine that there were not that many people actually turning away. The two-time defending champions absorbed a torturous trampling in the trenches that cost them a shot at history, with line play that was downright offensive. I give you no points for this pun. The alliteration, maybe. The Philadelphia Eagles defensive front engulfed Patrick Mahomes' would-be protectors like a massive wave closing out on a surfer at the pipeline in the heart of winter, draining the suspense from Super Bowl licks. This is a confused metaphor. They engulfed the would-be protectors? No, they engulfed Patrick Mahomes. That is not... Instead of becoming the first team, I'm going to be persnickety. Instead of becoming the first team to capture three consecutive Lombardi trophies, Kansas City received a reality check, suffering a 40-22 defeat in New Orleans in February that underscored its glaring weakness, their glaring weakness. Looking back, the first team All-Pro center Creed Humphrey called it a bad day at the office, and it was, in the same way that the season 2 finale of Severance depicted a bad day at Lumen Industries. I have no idea what that means. There was no way to expunge the experience from anyone's memory or to ignore the obvious. In lieu of a do-over, the line needed a makeover. This is what I like to refer to as a throwaway paragraph. To Chiefs coach Andy, very un-Hemingway. Did you know Ernest Hemingway wrote for the Kansas City Star? Ernest Hemingway also said that Kansas City was like, he either said Constantinople or Paris, I can't remember. But anyway, to Chiefs coach Andy Reid, a former BYU tackle, the unit's failure was especially jarring. As Reid told me Thursday after an OTA session, it caught up to us. Rushing the passer was their strength. Stopping it was not our strength. They took advantage. But look, I take full responsibility. That is just the most understated way. That is an Andy Reid answer. It's on me to fix it, to get it where it should be. I think we're getting there. So there's two things. I don't think it's on Andy Reid, okay? But there are two things that I would put on Andy Reid. One is uncharacteristic of Andy Reid, and one is the most characteristic of Andy Reid thing that we have. It goes back to the beginning of this channel. I've been complaining about it. But the uncharacteristic thing is Andy Reid never went back to Kingsley Suamataia. There were certainly games where he would not have had as bad a time as he had versus the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson. There were other games where Kingsley probably would have been able to go it alone. They never went back to him. That is an uncharacteristic Andy Reid thing. That's just the left tackle position, however. But overall, with the offensive line, one thing that's very characteristic of Andy Reid, one thing that I have been hoping he would change since I started this channel, he does not rotate on the offensive line. Not a jot or tittle during the game will we see rotation. And if there even in, not been a lot of blowouts lately, obviously, but one drive in a game where one guy, Trey Smith, yields one drive to whoever his backup is. Hard to do that with the left tackle, hard to do that with the center. But otherwise, you can get a guy in there for a couple of reps. It would be nice to see that happen, because then when someone goes down with injury, as happened in the Buccaneers Super Bowl, allegedly, I don't remember anyone who has actually said they saw that game, or when somebody just doesn't play up to snuff, you have someone behind him who has a little bit of experience, even if it's the tiniest amount. For Mahomes' sake, they'd better be. As he approaches his 30th birthday in September, the transcendent quarterback has already established himself as one of the sport's all-time greats. However, the three-time Super Bowl champion has also been haunted by what might have been twice. Against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Super Bowl LIV, no one's seen that game, when, according to Next Gen Stats, the besieged quarterback ran 497 yards before his passes and sacks. I had never seen that stat before. That is wild. And again in February, Mahomes has had his shot at championships snuffed, largely because opposing defenders were constantly in his grill. That's no way for a franchise quarterback to spend his Sunday super or otherwise. While Mahomes has remained highly supportive, his linemen are acutely aware they can't expose him to that type of punishment. So Patrick Mahomes, yes, has lost 2 Super Bowls, allegedly, because of offensive line play or not play. And everyone is running with this as if this were some type of indictment on the franchise. No, the Chiefs still got to 5 Super Bowls. 3-2 in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes has a .667 winning percentage in Super Bowls, better than most quarterbacks exit the league in the regular season winning percentage. So it is absolutely insane for this to be a recurring talking point. Here's what it is. It's very, very difficult to find a left tackle. Very difficult. If you're not drafting in the top 15, it's almost impossible, or it's a bank breaker. The Kansas City Chiefs have several players at very high levels of pay. That's why we lost our offensive guard this offseason. And so it's very difficult for a team like the Chiefs to acquire a left tackle. If you go back, one left tackle probably is the difference between at least one of those games being very, very different than it turned out. So that's one position. Yeah, the offensive line structurally got decimated by injury leading up to the Buccaneers Super Bowl. The whole thing. But it wasn't just that they didn't have any players. It's that all the players they had got hurt somewhere along the way. That's what that season that's what happened that season. Last season, they just couldn't find a left tackle. Had an all-pro center, had Trey Smith at guard, had Jawan Taylor kind of on the field. I mean, I guess maybe not mentally there, but and then the left guard position was Joe Thuney until he became the left tackle. That's all this is. That's all this is. And now, well, we'll get to that later in this article. It's definitely a big responsibility, said second-year lineman Kingsley Suamataia, who began his career last September by struggling at left tackle and is now competing for a starting job at left guard. I made a video just the other day about Mekhi Becton making that same type of transition, so I have thoughts on that there. It's taking that pride and telling yourself, yeah, I'm going to block for this guy. He's got my back, and man, you give him time and he'll slice up that defense. It just gives us that bigger chip on our shoulders, so we're going to come right back and punch back even harder this year. Not surprisingly, some of those shoulders have changed. Gone is first-team All-Pro guard Joe Thuney, traded to the Chicago Bears in March for a fourth-round pick in 2026 as a salary-shedding move. Not just a salary-shedding move. To call this a salary-shedding move suggests that the Chiefs were just in cap trouble and had to find some place to lose money. Technically not true. Here's what happened. The Chiefs have a center that is fairly high paid for a center. They are going to have a right guard, assuming he shows up, that is the highest paid guard in the league. They're going to have a left guard who is a high draft pick. And, well, Joe Thuney would have been the left guard, and he was very highly paid. So they would have had the three interior positions on the offensive line eating up an insurmountable amount of money against the salary cap. So they got worse at left guard to take two shots at left tackle. Now, I'm not convinced that Kingsley Suamataia will be worse than Joe Thuney at run blocking. He's going to be worse than Joe Thuney at pass blocking. That's true. So what you're doing is saying we're taking a step back at left guard in order that we might be able to take several steps forward at left tackle. And by shedding the salary cap of Joe Thuney, they were able to take two swings, Jalen Moore and Josh Simmons. So the Chiefs signed one potential starter at left tackle, former San Francisco 49ers backup Jalen Moore, to a 2-year, $30 million deal in free agency and selected another, Josh Simmons, in the first round of April's draft. There could be three full-fledged position battles on the Kansas City line this summer, with only Humphrey and Pro Bowl guard Trey Smith, who skipped OTAs while seeking a contract extension, considered locks to retain their starting jobs. Two returning Super Bowl starters, left guard Mike Caliendo and right tackle Jawaan Taylor, could be backups when the Chiefs open their season against the Los Angeles Chargers on Friday, September 5th in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Now, there is no part of me that believes Mike Caliendo is starting the season at left guard. No part of me at all that believes Mike Caliendo will be out there on the field. Mike Caliendo, when you start looking at the depth chart, when you start looking at some of the players that the Kansas City Chiefs have brought in, might not make the team. And I do not say that to disparage Mike Caliendo. I made a video about Mike Caliendo when he was UDFA saying exactly that. He will be a player in the NFL. He will be, despite the fact that he was a UDFA on a 53-man roster. At the time, I wasn't sold that it would be the Chiefs, but I knew he was a 53-man guy. So he's gone, right? Not gone, but not on the starting lineup. Jawaan Taylor, if you've spent any time around here, you know my take on this. Say Josh Simmons comes in and he's just lights out. Just lights out at left tackle. September 5th, he is on the field, ready and raring to go. I don't think Jawaan Taylor is safe with Jalen Moore on the roster. I'm not sure Jawaan Taylor is safe with some of the other guys the Kansas City Chiefs have brought in. So there will be much turmoil along this line. The interesting thing, so I don't think that Mike Caliendo not being the starting guard is very interesting. I think that's kind of a foregone conclusion. The interesting case is Jawaan Taylor. That is an interesting case. If the Kansas City, so Jawaan Taylor's a starting level tackle. He just is. We get irritated with him because of all the laundry that follows him around the field. I understand that. And he's not great with the run, but he does well enough in pass blocking that he is a starting level right tackle in the NFL. What if the Kansas City Chiefs suddenly have 3 starting level tackles on their roster? Now, as much as I like to talk about and pretend that Brett Veach is going to trade every asset for a future draft pick because I'm a huge NFL draft Nick, I would rather keep all 3 of those guys. I think that you would too. But that doesn't mean that Jawaan Taylor has to be the starter at right tackle. While we're talking about trades, We talked about the uninteresting foregone conclusion. We talked about the interesting idea that maybe Jawan Taylor won't be starting. What about the super interesting but super scary idea that Trey Smith might decide he doesn't want to play on a 1 year, $20-some million contract? That would be awful, wouldn't it? But if he makes that decision, there's no doubt in my mind, Brett Veach will get something out of him. Brett Veach will be trading Trey Smith if Trey Smith says, I refuse to play. Brett Veach, however this works, I don't know if he has Sun Tzu in his back pocket or what. Brett Veach seemingly always gets top level value for his talent. Think of Tyreek Hill. And always seems to get other people's players at something of a discount after his first 3-ish seasons as the GM. How often do you see Brett Veach losing a trade for a player? Just very interesting, and I don't want to talk about Trey Smith maybe not being a Kansas City Chief anymore. The article goes on. As they prepare for a long, hot, competitive summer, the Chiefs' returning linemen have tried hard to put that poor performance behind them, an endeavor that began 3 months ago with a group film session that broke down their Super Bowl struggles. Wouldn't that have been a fun room to be in? There's stuff that we need to correct, whether it's on the mental side or the physical side, Humphrey said. It's just making sure you're ready to go the full effort, full speed on game day. It's on us to correct it. Everybody came in this spring with a great attitude, ready to roll. Remember earlier when I talked about Andy Reid and that rotating offensive lineman idea? Here's something else that we have to start keeping an eye on. Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, just played out their rookie contracts. They have played through 4 seasons of football. In 4 seasons of football, they have essentially played 5 years of games, because the Kansas City Chiefs have been to every AFC championship for which these players have been around. They have been to 3 Super Bowls for which they have been around. 2/5, 40% of their offensive line, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, those are the only 2 I'm counting for this just because, have been around for all of those games, have taken all those additional hits, have thrown all of those extra blocks, have carried all of their weight around on their knees for that extra time. Getting guys a play off here and there, getting guys a drive on the bench here and there, extends careers and extends liveliness in their season. Humphrey has been a part of the solution before. During their rookie season, and in wake of Super Bowl Ulf debate, he and Smith were part of a complete overhaul that featured 5 new starters on the offensive line in 2021. Judging from the enthusiasm Reid expressed Thursday about Simmons selected with the 32nd and final pick of the first round, after Kansas City moved down 1 spot via a trade with the Eagles, there's a strong chance the former Ohio State standout will be asked to follow in a similar career path. Simmons, considered a potential top 10 pick, slid after suffering a season-ending torn patellar tendon in October. There was some concern that Simmons might not be fully healed before the start of the season, but on Thursday, Reid said the rookie looks strong, and in OTAs, if it looks like he's in good shape. If so, he'd be the front runner for the left tackle job, with Moore also in the mix to start at right tackle. If the Chiefs can stabilize the all-important role of Mahomes' blindside protector, it would be a major relief to the quarterback and his head coach. The Chiefs tried 4 players at that spot last season. Sua Mataia, who was benched in Week 2, Wanya Morris, benched during an ugly late November victory over the Las Vegas Raiders, DJ Humphries, a November signee who suffered a hamstring injury late in his first start, a December 8th victory over the Chargers, and, out of necessity, Tooney. So, Josh Simmons. I have no qualms saying this. Guy, I like to think that I offer you tempered expectations and realistic takes on the Kansas City Chiefs. Something along those lines. I don't have merch because that tempered expectations and realistic takes does not make for a good t-shirt slogan, right? But here's what I will say. If Josh Simmons is who it looks like Josh Simmons could be, the Chiefs will have, Mahomes will beat Tom Brady's rings. Mahomes will have 8 Super Bowls. I just, that is, if he has a franchise left tackle on a rookie deal, he's going to rack up 2 or 3 in the next 5 years. There's no doubt in my mind about that. If Josh Simmons is who it looks like he could be, the Chiefs have never had that in the Mahomes era. Mahomes has been to 5 Super Bowls in 7 seasons without that. Without that. In addition to weakening the Chiefs at one position, left guard, the shifting of Thuney ultimately proved to be unsatisfactory. Mindful of his vulnerability at the point of attack, the Eagles loaded up their front to challenge Thuney and bull rushed with abandon. As a result, Philly defensive coordinator Vic Fangio was able to accomplish his goal of pressuring Mahomes without calling a single blitz, and the Eagles finished with 6 sacks and 11 QB hits. If there's one other place where we can blame Andy Reid, is that he had no counter hook. He had no other game plan. He had no pivot. He didn't pivot at all in the Super Bowl until eventually when they were down 24 points, he just put Mahomes in shotgun and said, throw it up. Until then, they were trying to run the full game plan. It was every offensive line's nightmare, but there was plenty of blame to go around. When I asked Reid on Thursday how much of the Super Bowl defeat he ascribed to line struggles, he shook his head and said, it didn't start out that way. We were off a tick. Pat and tight end Travis Kelce and really everyone. We had a hard time executing on that first series, and it got rougher. Eventually, yes, the line didn't hold up. Yeah, let's not talk about Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl. That is verboten around here. Offensive coordinator Matt Nagy agreed it was a struggle from the second play of the game on. We never got into a rhythm. I feel like there were a lot of plays where we were one person off, whether it was a missed assignment, below par fundamentals and technique, or poor play design. Their defensive line set the tone early on and made it tough for us both in the run and the passing game. And I do have to admit, that's how the Super Bowl felt. The Super Bowl felt as if it was just one, it was a snowball. It was not a slap in the face from the beginning. It started off as just being a little bit off. And then the Eagles weren't. And then the Chiefs were. And then the Eagles weren't. And it just took off that way. Our offensive line fought the entire game. The beauty of our team is nobody blames. We all stick together and start with ourselves and what we could have done better. We will use this as motivation to take 2 steps forward. It may take a while for the Chiefs' new look line to repair the unit's reputation, but there won't be a very long grace period. In week 2, the Chiefs return home to the Arrowhead Stadium to host the Eagles and all that implies. In the meantime, Suamataia said, you've got to put your best foot forward every day. Not until the ball is snapped, Jawan Taylor. Not until the ball is snapped. Soon enough, there will be a slew of fired-up opponents trying to push the Chiefs linemen backward and trigger some bad Super Sunday flashbacks. That's true. Here's the thing. If the Chiefs have suddenly an elite pass-blocking left tackle in Josh Simmons, the Chiefs have Kingsley Suamataia, who is a mauler at left guard, Creed Humphrey, who is a former wrestler at center, and Trey Smith, who is a professional wrestling fan and connoisseur and absolute bear at the right tackle position. You have, and whoever ends up starting at right tackle. Here's the thing. Whoever ends up starting off at right tackle is going to be a decent pass blocker. Jawan Taylor, Jalen Moore, both decent pass blockers. So you could have a situation where all of a sudden the Kareem Hunts of the world, the Isaiah Pacheco's of the world, who can bruise a little bit in the middle of that line, can pick up 4.5 yards on first down. If you can pick up 4.5 yards on first down, all of a sudden it's 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5. Patrick Mahomes has the entire playbook open to him. Andy Reid does not become predictable at that point. And Patrick Mahomes has a few who cares downs per game. What do I mean who cares downs? Well, if it's 2nd and 3, who cares if we throw an incompletion? And who cares if we throw an incompletion means Patrick Mahomes gets to say, hey, Xavier, just run. Just run, man. We'll figure this out. And we saw in the Super Bowl how dangerous that can be. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. We are over 2 years now of consecutive daily uploads. I believe it's 2.5 years of daily consecutive uploads. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.